I never believed in bad omens, not the kind people whisper about, not the kind that creep into your life quietly and refuse to leave. But on the morning my husband disappeared, something felt wrong long before I knew why. It started with silence. No text, no call, no note on the kitchen counter where he always left one when he had to leave early. The bed beside me was cold, untouched, like he'd never slept there at all. I remember lying still, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a car passing outside, and the strange heaviness in my chest that I couldn't explain, the kind of feeling you get right before bad news arrives. I checked the clock, 6:47 a.m. He should have been back from his run by now. My husband, Daniel, was many things: disciplined, predictable, almost painfully routine. Every morning at 5:30, he went jogging. Every morning, he returned by 6:15, showered, kissed my forehead, and complained about the coffee being too weak. But that morning, nothing. I called his phone, straight to voicemail. Once, twice, 5 times. Still nothing. I told myself not to panic. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he ran into someone. Maybe the front door was unlocked. That's when the unease turned into something darker. Daniel never left the door unlocked, ever. I walked outside, barefoot, the cold pavement biting into my skin, scanning the quiet street. His car was gone, his running shoes weren't by the door, his wallet was missing. But his phone charger was still plugged in. And that's when fear settled deep in my chest, because Daniel never went anywhere without his phone. By mid-morning, I had called hospitals, police stations, even his workplace, though he'd taken the day off, or at least that's what I thought. No one had seen him. No accidents, no arrests, no record of him anywhere. It was like my husband had been erased. I spent the next 2 days in a fog of panic and denial. I barely ate, barely slept. I replayed our last conversation over and over in my head. "I'll be back before you wake up." That was the last thing he said to me. On the third night, exhaustion finally dragged me to the couch. The TV was on, volume low, some late-night news playing in the background. I wasn't really watching until I heard the words that made my blood run cold. "Breaking news just coming in. Authorities have released images of a person of interest connected to the ongoing investigation." I looked up, and the world stopped. There he was, my husband, not a blurry silhouette, not a mistaken look-alike. His face, clear, recognizable, frozen on my television screen. Underneath his photo, a flash flashed. "Man wanted in connection with shocking crime." My heart pounded so hard, I thought I might pass out. The anchor kept talking, but I couldn't hear the words anymore. All I could see was his face, the same face that kissed me goodnight, the same face I trusted with my life, the same man I thought I knew better than anyone. And in that moment, as my phone began to ring nonstop with unknown numbers, one terrifying thought shattered everything I believed about my marriage. Before the sirens, before the headlines, before the world learned his name, there was a life that felt ordinary, safe, predictable, and that was exactly why I never saw the truth coming. My name is Elena Brooks, and until 3 days ago, I believed I had the kind of marriage people secretly envied. Daniel and I met 12 years ago in the most unremarkable way, waiting in line at a coffee shop downtown. I had dropped my wallet, he picked it up. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing important at all. But I remember thinking, this man feels steady, and that mattered to me. I grew up in chaos, a father who disappeared when I was 10, a mother who worked 2 jobs and never really looked up. I learned early that stability wasn't guaranteed. It had to be chosen. Daniel felt like that choice. He was calm where I was anxious, grounded where I was emotional. He worked in logistics management for a regional shipping company. Nothing glamorous, but stable, predictable. We married after 2 years. No drama, no fireworks, just certainty. Or so I thought. Our life together was quiet, comfortable, almost boring in the best way. Mornings were coffee and soft music. Evenings were dinners on the couch and half-watched shows. Weekends meant grocery runs, laundry, and the occasional dinner with friends. People used to say, "You two are solid," and I believed it. But looking back now, there were cracks I chose not to see. Daniel guarded parts of himself too carefully. He never talked about his childhood in detail, brushed off questions about old friends, never posted on social media, never liked having his photo taken. I told myself he was private, that privacy was a strength. Sometimes, late nights, I'd wake up and find him sitting at the edge of the bed, staring at his screen with his screen turned away from me. When I asked what was wrong, he'd smile and say, "Just work stuff, go back to sleep." And I always did, because love makes you trust explanations you'd question from anyone else. We'd been married 7 years, no kids yet. We'd talked about it, eventually. Not now. Life felt stable, but not settled. That morning, the morning he disappeared, had started like any other. I remember hearing the shower turn on, the quiet thud of the front door closing, his footsteps fading down the driveway. But now, replaying it in my mind, I realized something that made my stomach tighten. He never kissed me goodbye. That had never happened before. As the day went on and the hours passed without word from him, my thoughts started spiraling. Was he hurt? Was he in trouble? Did he leave me? But even those fears felt small compared to what was coming, because by the time his face appeared on the evening news, the man I thought I knew was already gone, replaced by someone the world was suddenly afraid of. And the worst part, the news anchor hadn't even said his name yet. They didn't have to. I already knew it was him. The news replayed the footage on a loop, a grainy security video from a gas station just outside the city. The timestamp glowed in the corner of the screen, 2:17 a.m. That was 2 hours before Daniel was supposed to be out for his morning run. My breath caught in my throat as the camera zoomed in. There he was. Not jogging, not dressed for exercise. He was wearing a dark jacket, a baseball cap pulled low. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets like he was trying to hide something, or himself. The reporter's voice continued calmly, almost coldly. Authorities are searching for this man in connection with an ongoing investigation involving a violent incident late last night. He is considered a person of interest at this time. A person of interest. The words echoed in my head, hollow and unreal. I felt the room tilt. I remembered that jacket. I'd washed it just 2 days before. I remembered complaining about the stain on the sleeve. I remembered him laughing it off, saying, "It's nothing, I'll take care of it." Now, I wondered what that stain really was. The camera cut to another angle, Daniel stepping into a black SUV parked beside the pumps. The footage blurred as the vehicle pulled away, but the license plate was clear enough for the reporter to read it aloud. It was his car. My hands started shaking so violently I dropped the remote. I wanted to scream that there had to be some mistake, that the man on the screen was my husband, yes, but not that man, not someone capable of whatever they were accusing him of. But then the reporter said the words that shattered the last piece of denial I had left. Police have confirmed the individual is connected to a violent assault that occurred earlier that evening. The victim remains hospitalized in critical condition. I collapsed onto the couch. Violent. Assault. Those words didn't belong in the same sentence as Daniel's name. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Texts, missed calls, unknown numbers, friends, family. I didn't answer any of them. I just stared at the screen as the anchor continued. Authorities are urging the public not to approach the suspect if spotted. He is considered dangerous. Dangerous. I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying to breathe. This couldn't be real. This had to be a mistake. I thought back to the night before, to how quiet he had been, how he'd barely touched his dinner, to the way he'd kissed my forehead just a little longer than usual before going to bed. Had he known? Had he already decided to disappear? My thoughts were cut off by a knock at the door. Sharp, firm, unmistakable. I froze. The knock came again, louder this time. "Police." "Ma'am, we need to speak with you." My legs felt like they might give out beneath me. I stood there, heart pounding so hard I thought they could hear it through the door. I had loved this man, shared a bed with him, trusted him with my life. And now the police were standing on my doorstep, believing I knew something, anything about the monster they were hunting. I reached for the doorknob, my hand shaking uncontrollably. And in that moment, one terrifying thought took hold. What if the man I married was never who he said he was at all? The officers didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. Their calm was worse than anger. They asked me to sit, asked if anyone else lived in the house, asked when I'd last seen my husband, asked if I knew where he might be now. Each question felt like a quiet accusation. I answered them all, my voice shaking, my thoughts spiraling. I told them the truth, or at least the truth as I knew it, that he'd gone for a run, that he never came back, that I hadn't heard from him since. One of the officers, a woman with tired eyes and a notepad clutched to her chest, studied me carefully. "Did your husband ever mention being in trouble? Financial issues, conflicts with anyone, anything out of the ordinary?" I shook my head. "No, never." She wrote something down. That small motion felt like a verdict. They asked to look around the house. I said yes. What choice did I have? I watched them open drawers, scan shelves, inspect closets. Every sound echoed too loudly. The house suddenly felt unfamiliar, like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. When one of them opened Daniel's home office, my chest tightened. That room had always been his territory, neat, organized, off limits in a way I'd never questioned. Now it was being dismantled by strangers. They photographed his computer, his desk, his files. Then one of the officers paused. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "do you recognize this?" He held up a small black notebook I had never seen. I shook my head. "No, that's not mine." It was hidden behind the filing cabinet. My stomach dropped. I watched as he flipped it open. Inside were dates, times, locations, addresses I didn't recognize, and numbers. Lots of numbers, not phone numbers, amounts, large ones. The room felt suddenly too small to breathe in. They exchanged a look, the kind professionals share when they've just confirmed something without saying it out loud. "We'll need to take this," the female officer said gently, "and we may need to speak with you again." Again? As if this wasn't already too much. When they finally left, the silence was unbearable. I sat on the couch staring at the space where Daniel's shoes should have been, my hands trembling in my lap. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You need to stop talking to the police." My heart nearly stopped. Another message came immediately after. "They don't know everything yet. Keep it that way." I dropped the phone like it had burned me. My first instinct was to call the police back, but fear held me still, because suddenly the question wasn't whether my husband had done something terrible, it was whether he was watching me right now. I looked toward the windows, the door, the shadows beyond the porch light, and for the first time since he disappeared, a terrifying thought settled deep in my chest. What if Daniel wasn't running from the law? What if he was protecting me from something far worse? I didn't sleep that night. Not even a minute. Every sound outside my window felt like a signal, every shadow like a warning. My phone sat silent on the table, but I couldn't stop staring at it, waiting for it to ring. And then it did. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to answer, but I did. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Elena," said a deep voice, calm, controlled, but with an edge that made me shiver. "Don't hang up. You need to hear me before you believe what you see on TV." It was Daniel. The relief I felt was immediate. Then horror flooded through me. "Daniel? What's going on? The news, the police." "Stop," he said sharply. "I can't explain everything over the phone. You'll only panic. But I need you to trust me, just for a little longer." I wanted to scream at him. I wanted answers, but something in his tone, something urgent, kept me silent. 3 days ago, he continued, I stumbled on something I shouldn't have. People you'd never suspect. Dangerous people. They're involved in crimes bigger than you can imagine, and they know I know. If I didn't disappear, they'd come for me, and for you. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. You're lying, I said, but my voice betrayed me. Part of me wanted to believe him, desperately. I swear I'm not. I left on my own to protect you. I had to make them think I was someone else, someone guilty. That's why the news, why the police, everything. I had to disappear for their eyes only. I sank to the floor. My mind was a storm of confusion, terror, and disbelief. Then, the victim? I asked, my throat tight. That was staged, he admitted. A setup. Nothing fatal, but it had to look real. It had to convince them I was dangerous, so they'd leave you alone. Every detail, every headline, I orchestrated it. I pressed my hand over my mouth. You risked everything for me? I whispered, tears welling up. Yes, he said, voice breaking slightly for the first time. I had no choice. I couldn't tell you, not yet. It would have put you in immediate danger. And suddenly it all made sense. The odd behaviors, the secrecy, the unexplained absences, the small inconsistencies I'd noticed but dismissed, they weren't lies born of betrayal, they were lies born of necessity. I don't know if I can process this, I said, voice shaking. You left me terrified. I thought you were gone forever. I know, he said softly, and I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I couldn't risk you knowing until I could fix it. I pressed the phone to my chest, trying to steady my racing heart. Everything I thought I knew about my husband, my marriage, had been turned upside down. And for the first time, fear mixed with something else. Relief, gratitude, the knowledge that even in the darkest, most terrifying moment, the man I loved had been protecting me. But one question still lingered. Who are these people? I asked. Who are you really up against? There was a pause. And then Daniel said quietly, almost to himself, people you'd never expect. People who hide behind masks of normalcy. People who don't forgive. People who would destroy everything if I let them. And in that moment, I realized my life had changed forever. I wasn't just a wife. I was a witness, a partner in a game I didn't even know existed, and the real danger wasn't over. The first rays of dawn spilled through the curtains, casting pale light over my living room. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't stopped thinking about Daniel, the news, and the shadowy world he had been dragged into. Then my phone buzzed again. It was Daniel. Meet me, he texted. Just that. No location, no explanation. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed danger, but deep down, a part of me knew I had to see him. I had to understand everything firsthand. I got into my car and drove with shaking hands, following vague instructions that led to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The place looked deserted, cold, silent, and then I heard a familiar voice. Elena. I turned. There he was, Daniel, his face tired, eyes haunted, but alive. We didn't speak at first. We just stood there, staring at each other, letting the silence say what words couldn't. Finally, he pulled me into his arms. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I know I terrified you, but I couldn't let them get to you. I had to make them think I was someone else, someone guilty. That's why the news, why the police, everything. I had to disappear for their eyes only. I clung to him, the weight of the past 3 days pressing down on me. Every emotion I'd felt, fear, anger, confusion, relief, collided inside me. You put me through hell, I said, voice shaking. You disappeared. People thought you were a criminal. I didn't know if I'd ever see you again. "I know," he said, voice heavy with guilt, "and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. But we're not out of the woods yet." He explained everything in detail, the criminal network he'd accidentally uncovered, how he had staged his disappearance, how he made the news report look real to protect me. Every detail fit together like pieces of a puzzle I didn't even realize existed. By the time he finished, exhaustion and relief settled over me in equal measure. "Then what now?" I asked. "Now," he said, taking my hands in his, "we disappear, temporarily, lay low until it's safe. Then we start rebuilding, together, safely." And for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. We left the city that night, carrying only what we needed. Every mile away felt like a weight lifting from my chest. Daniel was beside me, not as a stranger, not as a criminal, but as the man I married, complicated and flawed, but still mine. And though the world outside still held danger, I realized that love could survive even the darkest shadows if trust, courage, and truth were enough to guide you through. Months had passed since that night. Daniel and I were no longer living in the city we once called home. The apartment we rented was small, quiet, and far removed from the chaos that had invaded our lives. Life had returned to a slower rhythm, but nothing would ever feel the same again. I sometimes woke in the middle of the night, half expecting the phone to ring with news that the danger had found us, but it never did. Daniel was by my side, awake and watchful, yet finally able to relax a little. We rebuilt our lives slowly. The routine we once took for granted, simple dinners, quiet mornings, laughter over coffee, now carried a weight of gratitude I'd never felt before. But the experience had changed me, changed us. I realized trust is fragile and love is complicated, that the people you think you know best might carry secrets you can't imagine, and that sometimes survival means believing in someone when everything in the world tells you not to. I often replay that day in my mind, the day I saw his face on the news, the moment I realized my life had been a lie, the terrifying hours that followed. And I also remember the moment I finally understood the truth. The danger had never been between us. The danger had been out there, in the shadows. And in facing it, we had been tested, forged, and somehow survived. Daniel squeezes my hand as I look out the window at the quiet street, the sun rising gently over the rooftops. "I never make you go through anything like that again," he says softly. I nod, knowing it's true. And yet, a small part of me knows that life doesn't always allow promises to last, that danger can return in ways you don't expect. But for now, we are alive, together, and that is enough. Because some truths, no matter how terrifying, remind you not only of what you fear, but of what you would fight to protect. And in the quiet aftermath, I finally understand. Love isn't just about the safe moments. It's about standing together when the world falls apart.